Yeah, welcome everybody. So we are now in session here with these three gentlemen. We will be talking about 3D streaming formats. So first, let me shortly introduce our three speakers here for the discussion. And keep in mind, we will first have a couple of topics we will discuss, but after halftime, basically you can join the discussion. And of course, just note down if you have any questions. So there will be sufficient time. We have around 1 hour. So there should be sufficient time for our discussion here, yeah. So right of myself, we see here Eric Kurland. So I think most of you know him. So apart from basically doing a lot of technical support at the moment, he's mostly known as here that he has a 3D museum, so 3D space in LA. So already a couple of years. So he's an expert, especially 3D technology, but he has also a background in terms of 3D production. So I think, for example, The Simpsons was something you were working on. So he's really an expert, and he has a lot of historical artifacts. So sadly, I did not see them during the demo session, but I know that you had I heard from other people that you had a great session yesterday. So yeah, and if you are interested in this topic, just talk to him. So yeah, he has a lot of knowledge in this. So this is Eric. So then Nicolas Routhier. So he just gave a talk. I think most of the faces I saw here before. So you heard the talk. So he is very knowledgeable in the field of 3D, also 3D production. So CubicSpace is his current company, but he has already 1-2 other startups already. So we will also discuss a little bit more about his background later on. And then we have Andrew Woods, who I think everybody knows here in the room. So he is our senior in our conference committee, the guiding light. So he's from Curtin University. And I think what I always say is very exciting about his career. So apart from being associate professor, he's leading basically one of the leading visualization labs in the world, and this since many years. So I saw a couple of labs in my career collapse because it's always a funding issue and careers are changing, right? But yeah, so, and it's a quite large one. So you probably saw, if you saw his presentations, it's amazing. So yeah, so if you want to see more of that, you have to go to Perth. Great. So let's start the discussion. So my name is Bjorn Sommer, so I'm from the Royal College of Art. I'm very unimportant, but I'm basically the moderator today. So probably let's first start to look a little bit into the history, right? So the main topic is, of course, 3D streaming. What is the future of this? But so what do you think, and probably Eric, you want to probably start with this from a historical perspective, what failed in terms of 3D streaming so far? So why does not everybody now at this stage have 3D streaming available at home?
Well, you know, back during sort of the feeding frenzy of 2012, when every consumer electronics company was putting out some kind of 3D TV, 3D Blu-ray players, consumer electronics show, everything was all about 3D displays. There were a number of 3D streaming options. Netflix had very briefly, a 3D streaming option. Actually, the largest aggregator of streaming 3D content was, and actually probably still is, YouTube, because of all of the uploaded videos that people have done now for over a decade. But there really hasn't, I guess there's the Voodoo video rental streaming service still has 3D available. The PlayStation 3 was also a 3D Blu-ray player and offered 3D streaming services. So there have been precedents for it. But the options now are rather slim. I think after 2016, when 3D TVs went out of production, there really hasn't been any kind of push to have a 3D streaming standard or format. And I think part of the problem has always been, how do you stream the content for the people who have a 3D TV, but also have people who don't have a 3D TV be able to watch that? I should probably also pass the mic down for other opinions.
All right, so that's a good question. Yeah, lack of devices. If you had tons of devices out there that people could use to stream and watch, then yes, there would be an appetite. There would be a business case for this. And that's the major issue. How do you make money out of it? I remember at the time, Sensio, one of my former companies, we had a service called 3D Go. So we did, yeah, absolutely. So at the time there was 3D Go, 3D Crave. There was also 3D, and we were all doing different things. But at 3D Go, we said, we're going to go for content that people care about, and we went for studio content, and it cost us a fortune. It was insanely expensive to secure the rights, and you had to do it regionally, right? So there was not a critical mass of people that were there. And to be quite honest, I mean, I'm tackling probably on a subject for later, but one of the issues was recurrence. So we had 150 titles. It was pretty good, actually. It was one of the largest collection. But then, you would get 1 or 2 titles a month. How do you get people excited about 1 or 2 new titles a month? How do you keep them engaged? And that's a problem. And it's a problem that I foresee for Apple's effort right now. Is like, if you don't get a constant pipeline of new content, people are used today to getting tons and tons of content. So if it doesn't ask more of the companies to actually just, you can also watch 3D if you want to, and it doesn't ask too much, then you will see a lot of services probably embracing that just to try it. But the model of studios is they don't leave any money on the table, and so if you want the 3D rights, you're going to pay for it, and then people are going to ask the question, okay, so how much money can I make out of it? How many new subscribers? How many? So today, I think that the reason why you don't have that many 3D streaming services is there's not a critical mass of people out there. And the other one is that the ones that are out there, they're aware that they can go away, so they prefer to collect. So there's a very strong community of people that are buying 3D Blu-rays and looking for that antique one or that exotic one from Denmark that's subtitled in Japanese, but that one I can have, right? So you see that there's a community that's out there, but that's pretty much it.
Thanks. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different aspects to cover here. One of the other things I wanted to mention is that I run in my spare time, I run a website called 3D Movie List, which lists 3D movies and also sources or availability of Blu-ray 3D discs. Not quite the specialised Japanese title that's only available in Ukrainian or whatever. But it's mainly for mainstream titles. It only lists, partly my sanity, only lists content that has been exhibited in theatres. And I originally started out that website because people were saying, there's not much or enough 3D content, and my own impression was there was a ton. It was just not available. So I set up the website and started listing all of this content, and through the feeding frenzy years, there was so many titles becoming available, it was hard to keep up, and it's still hard to keep up, only because I don't touch it too often. But it is the case that there are lots of Blu-ray 3D discs that have been released, but the supply of those has been gradually declining and gradually slowing. At the same time, streaming services have been taking off. I mean, I think one thing that has definitely changed over the past, since 2012 to now, 12 years, is that now a lot of people have much better internet connections. I know when back in 2012, our own internet connection at home was really, really poor, so I couldn't even consider streaming at that time. And Blu-ray 3D disc was the best way of doing that, because you had very good quality. If you streamed, you were probably going to get a lower quality stream, a lower quality playback. Now that is improving significantly. It's improved significantly. But with the reduction of the availability of Blu-ray 3D discs, then people will be looking for other sources, and looking to the major streaming services such as Apple TV and Disney Plus, which have fortunately now just in the last few weeks announced the availability of 3D streaming. At this time only for the Vision Pro, but fingers crossed that might be expanded in the future. So I might just leave it at that for the moment and go back to you.
Maybe just one side question. So do you think in general 3D Blu-rays have a future, or is it basically just something, so apart from streaming, which will be only a very sideline in the future in terms of 3D content?
Well, I think 3D aside, there's just in the past few months, there's been a lot of talk about how, with like Netflix dropping 200 titles, that physical media is still necessary. People who want to have access to these movies are worried now that movies that they've been able to watch might disappear, and having that disc at home, you have a physical copy that you can always watch. So whether that's going to translate into the continued production of 3D Blu-rays, don't know. That also depends on whether the electronics manufacturers continue to make Blu-ray players. But at least among movie collectors and enthusiasts, there is still a very strong desire to have that physical media.
Yeah, great. So I think another interesting fact, what Niklas and me also discussed already, is I think in terms of usability, right? So we had a lot of different ecosystems during the time 3D movies came out. So in the 2013, 2016. So I think so. We talked already about 2016. It was the last year when we had a new 3D TV released to the market, and then it basically. All the producers basically dropped the topic in terms of 3D TVs. And what is great at this conference, what we saw now and what we heard from CES is basically that 3D TVs are back. But I think in our conversation we were talking about that also usability is a big problem, right? So do you think that also 3D streaming, 3D TVs, there's a lot of potential in terms of how you can improve the usability in the future, and I think that might be also what Apple is doing right now, right? And in this context, yeah.
So what are you referring to?
Usability in terms of 3D TVs, 3D Blu-ray players, how you have to connect them, for example.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, and reflecting back on the idea of owning stuff, I think that you can own digitally as well. So I think that the era of connected devices or like having physical devices, it's going to be very challenging for this to stay because everybody's moving away from that. So it's going to be a question of trust. Do we trust people to own, like have our digital copy somewhere and upgrade it or whatever? But yeah, I do think that usability is a huge thing. I mean, you need to make it as user-friendly as possible. You need to make it so seamless, so easy that, because 3D has always been fighting 2D in a certain sense. Because 2D makes a lot of advances and 3D always brings in a compromise. So you want to get 3D, yeah, but you need to buy another stuff, like another device. Oh, you want 3D? Yeah, well, we cut on resolution. Okay, even with 3D gaming, it's the same thing. If you do 3D gaming, well, you will have less anti-aliasing, you will have less resolution, less frame rates or whatever, because you basically do double the job, right? So why not use all that to put it on 2D, and it's going to do the job. So I think that usability is a huge, huge, huge topic. I think that today, with the kind of bandwidth that we have, even with now with 5G, 6G that is already being promoted at this time for mobile devices, but also for streaming and the kind of connection that we got at home, I think that it's going to make it a lot easier for people to have quick access. And if we're able to bring in, like with the efforts like Apple to do spatial video, I think that if you democratize 3D capturing, then you can really think of 3D TV. I mean, I think that was the largest mistake that the industry did at the time. Called them 3D TVs. They should have called them 3D home theaters. Sounds stupid, sounds a thing of marketing, but it's actually a nice positioning. Don't make people expect that they're going to get every sporting event, cooking show, news flash, or whatever in 3D. It's a fantastic, it's a premium experience that we provide with a premium set. They position it as 3D TV. Well, yeah, you set expectations there, and then you deliver this. And I think that this could change with new devices that are coming up for the consumer market. And then if you can get YouTubers and TikTokers and whatever start producing 3D content, I think that, yeah, then you will see the resurgence happening, and this is going to become far more common.
Yeah, so with regard to usability, I think a lot of things are improving, but that might be sort of some of the concern of some of the streaming platforms coming back to, I've sort of made the comment in the topic description for this session was that existing streaming platforms could offer 3D content in a heartbeat, and that would be in the over-under format. The dilemma there is that someone without a 3D TV would accidentally play this version, and they say, oh, well, they'd ring up the streaming service and say, oh, why is it top half and why does it not look right? Well, with some of the new playback systems, they will be able to interrogate the TV and see whether it is or not. Blu-ray players can already do this. And in fact, if I turn my LG TV on after I turn on the Blu-ray player say, oh, you don't have a 3D TV, and oh, okay, I've got to turn off the Blu-ray player and then turn that back on again so it recognises it. Well, hopefully that sort of thing can be resolved more easily. But with, say for example, a device like the Apple TV 4K, then you'd be able to guide the user through what's necessary. Tick the box, do you definitely have a 3D TV? Or if it just interrogates the device through the HDMI, enable it only on compatible devices. One of the other interesting things about these new announcements is that the 3D version of the titles that they are making available in 3D will be made available at no extra cost. So if you're already an Apple TV subscriber or a Disney Plus subscriber and you have the Apple Vision Pro, you'll be able to watch the 3D version of the content that they've put on their platform at no extra cost. So is there a financial benefit to those platforms in this particular instance? It's hard to say. I think it's probably a market seeding exercise at this point. But will they charge extra for the 3D version like they do in the theatres? Or is that just a service they provide sort of as an incentive for people to subscribe to their service as opposed to another? I think Eric was also mentioning big screen TV is another application. I'll let you talk about that later. But there are hundreds and hundreds of titles available that could be made available through these platforms, and we are seeing some interesting releases in the Blu-ray 3D market at the moment in terms of the heritage or golden age content. A lot of older 3D movies are being released through, I think Kino Lorber is one of the main ones that's been working with 3D Film Archive. Thank you, Eric. And sort of repurposing and repairing some of these old content. And as far as I can tell, they keep on releasing them, so they must be profitable. So, there is a market. Whether it's big enough for many of these different, the bigger companies to be bothered about it is an open question. And I guess time will tell to a certain extent.
Yeah, I can speak to that because I've been involved in some of the 3D film archive projects. At the studio level, the home video divisions usually need at least 20,000, 25,000 units to justify doing a physical media release. Typically, a 3D Blu-ray release has a sell-through of about 3,500 to 5,000 units. So the studios don't see that as a profitable business to be in. But the smaller distributors, Kino Lorber, Classic Flicks, and so on, their business models are doing shorter runs for the collector's market. So they're more willing to release these catalog titles. And that's why we do see these classic movies. And there's another, I believe, 5 or 6 that are in restoration right now, coming out later this year. Now, to what you were saying about the Apple Vision Pro, being that I'm in Los Angeles and I do have a lot of contact with the studios and production companies there, I have had some very interesting conversations just over the last 2 weeks, and I'm actually not allowed to really say with whom at this point, but I know of, on the tail of the Disney Plus announcement, another very large streaming service has struck a deal, and I was asked by a person from the studio what my opinion of the Apple Vision Pro was, because they were preparing a lot of their catalog 3D titles to be released on that platform. I also know of several production companies that are gearing up for native 3D shooting for new material for the Apple Vision Pro. So there, to what you were saying, there actually is going to be, right out of the gate, hundreds of titles available, and quite a lot in the pipeline for the next year. One person was telling me the whole landscape for 3D production is changing by the time we get to this summer.
One last comment on usability, and it goes back to formats and standards. So now Apple is releasing an HEVC multi-view format, but then again, you know, you're with the Apple Vision Pro, and they did good. They sold 180,000 headsets in 15 minutes. Pretty darn impressive, right? Almost $1 billion in business overnight. Still 180,000 people, all right? Out of 8 billion people on the planet. It's still a very, very small number, and still not a lot of devices. And if you don't open up, it's going to be difficult. I know that you've shown all these papers and about using standard HEVC. And well, the reality is we're using standard HEVC multi-view decoders, and they're not compatible. We're not able to decode the standard Apple stream. So they make it very hard for other people. So therefore, you're stuck. It reminds me of the day when they released the first, Panasonic released their 3D TVs, and they bundled it with Avatar. What a deep move. That was ridiculous, because you're taking that one title that can launch an industry and you tie it up to a single display device. Yeah, maybe it helps sell one TV for a couple of months, but you're destroying an industry. So I think that opening up standards, making sure that everybody, like intercompatibility, cross-platform, making sure that it's open to everyone, it's going to benefit everyone. And stop that. There's a mentality in 3D of everybody wants to like protect its own little territory, but you have to be more open if you want this to be successful in the long run.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. So yeah. So do you have the feelings, or do you have the hopes that in the future Apple might open this market then in terms of standards, so that other production companies might be able to adopt that?
Well, Andrew had just mentioned big screen. There's it's an independent application that runs on a number of VR platforms that simulates a cinema. So you're sitting in a movie theater. The theater's populated with, I believe, up to 12 people who can all share viewing the same content on a virtual 40-foot cinema screen that is 3D capable. And actually through COVID lockdown, when people were isolated, this was a way to get together and actually watch movies. One of the things that Big Screen did, they made the app free, and they set up a streaming rental service where you could watch 3D movies. Interestingly, a month or two ago, the Big Screen 3D streaming service, that room disappeared. And Big Screen put out an announcement that we're sorry, we're not able to offer it at this time. We hope to be able to bring it back sometime soon. I haven't really seen any press about why that happened, but with the subsequent announcements about the Apple Vision Pro and the deals that they're making with studios, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a connection. I'm hoping that they're able to come up with some kind of licensing so that this app that is platform independent can continue to offer a lot of these streaming titles, and maybe even open it up if Big Screen was able to strike a deal with Disney Plus and so on, to have a Disney Plus room within Big Screen where you could meet up with friends to watch the same thing. I'd love to see that happen. I don't know if it will.
It obviously takes a lot of work to get the big names into the 3D market, like Disney Plus and Apple TV. So, hopefully, the work that they're doing to get these platforms sort of up to speed, etc., and perhaps some exclusivity for a time is necessary for that to happen. But hopefully, the market will open up and make it more accessible in the longer term. But I guess time will tell. The marketers will market.
Yeah, one thing I do find kind of interesting and maybe a little distressing is, I had mentioned that there are hundreds, thousands of hours of independent 3D material on YouTube, and Google's announced that there will not be a YouTube app for the Apple Vision Pro, so there won't be a way to watch any of that spatial material on the Vision Pro, at least for now.
But still, there's a reason for that, and there are many reasons for that. But one of them, like the quality, like Google is not. I think they're pretty reasonable about it. If you were to take the content that is right now on YouTube and put it in a VR headset, it would be a horrible experience. Because most of the content that's been done, if you blow it up to the VR to have a nice VR experience, it can be anything, and the resolution is absolutely poor. So basically what you end up doing is you end up, probably fighting at a disadvantage on a certain platform, because Google hasn't done any kind of screening on what's on YouTube. Of course, anything can go on YouTube, and some of it is excellent, but some of it is really, really bad. And when you try to put it, like blow it up, it becomes unwatchable. So I think it's the smart thing to do right now, but I wouldn't count YouTube out in the long run. They will figure their stuff out, and they will come with a controlled version sooner than later, I believe.
Well, for what it's worth, there's a lot of studio content that is problematic as well. Absolutely. So I don't think there's any way to make the experience of viewing some of those early 3D conversions any better on an Apple Vision Pro. You don't want to watch Clash of the Titans 3D? No. Yeah. So yeah, there is a qualitative aspect to this. That, and then there's also backdooring the gold rush of 3D. There was such a move to take anything that was in production and create a 3D version of it. I tend, rather than conversion versus native I tend to look at it more as whether it was intentionally produced to be 3D or whether the 3D was an afterthought applied. And there's so much afterthought material out there that when you do have something that's intentional 3D, it really does make a mark. But I don't know that there's going to be any kind of differentiation on the new platforms in the quality regard to the studio content either.
One that's very quick, like even so I've toured a bit, and you talked about Spatialify. They're spatially now. There are a few now that are coming up on the App Store to actually convert it. So some of them are free ones as well. So it's actually ramping up. But some of these, like, people will believe that this is how 3D is supposed to be, and the baseline is so small that when you shoot it and you convert it to side by side and you use the auto adjust or not that Spatialify provides. I mean, it's glorified 2D, right? And people will look at it and they will say, oh, so that's the big deal? That's what spatial videos are? This is what 3D is? And this is the danger of these things, is that you just come up with this and you rush to market and you say, oh, there's an opportunity. Apple is doing this. Let's just put it side by side and see how people react. And you're gonna create the same kind of, once again, excite people, set expectations level there, deliver that, and then you end up in the same place. So I think that controlling the environment, controlling the experience, making sure that you provide something that adds value and that people really care about, I think that's gonna be the landmark of success, and I think it's gonna take some time to get it all right across the board.
I mean, do we have in this context, it's great that you basically come up with a topic in terms of quality, because obviously this was one of the big failures during the 3D hype. There were just after the Avatar, there were so many super bad movies with unbelievable stereoscopic setups released, and this, I think, partly destroyed the hype. Do we have any idea how Apple is curating basically the materials they will make available in their store for their devices?
Let's hope that Clash or Crash of the Titans is not one of the titles that they release the 3D version of. There are some titles where we don't want to see the 3D version, and that's one of them. I mean, there is a huge variability. Dmitry Vatilin, I think it is, from Moscow University, did a lot of work processing and analysing the 3D quality of lots of different titles, and it was hugely variable. Looking at the 3D movies from the 1950s and the 1980s, when there was no digital part in the production process, it was all analogue. Oh my goodness, there was huge misalignments with most of the productions, and well, I mean, I was still there watching 3D, and lots of people were, but there was big problems with it. With some of with the new, releases, they are taking the opportunity to correct those alignment errors in the format. I mean, obviously, some shots are irreparable sometimes, like a stereo card. But there's a lot that can even be done to fix up or repair a content that was released. Whether they'll go to that extent or just release it as is hard to say, but it would not surprise me if they picked the cream of the crop initially. But there are so many good titles to choose from, and despite that, there will be some titles they can't access. And I've mentioned before that one of the most memorable and best experiences I've seen in a 3D theatre was U2 3D. I saw it at an IMAX theatre, and that was phenomenal. Just blew the socks off kind of material. It's never been released, available on Blu-ray 3D, and oh boy, it would be great to see that again.
I can talk to two of those things that you were just. First off, with regards to the U2 film, yes, that was one of the greatest experiences. It was the U2 3D film that inspired Wim Wenders to use 3D to make Pina. And seeing that in 3D on an IMAX screen was a sublime experience. I have it under good authority that Apple actually rejected it for quality. because it was captured at 1080. So it looks like Apple is looking at the capture of the material and taking that into consideration as to whether they want to stream it in their 4K per eye system. To also talk to quality control, another platform that we haven't mentioned yet that now defunct was Nintendo's 3DS streaming service. The 3DS was a pocket device, internet connected, and Nintendo had a channel that was constantly creating new content and streaming movies and so on. And initially, they received a number of complaints about things that were misaligned, things that were inverted. And I know this firsthand because I subcontracted to Nintendo for 2 years to review their material and do corrections to it before they distributed it. I'm hoping then that Apple has some kind of program in check to actually do a QC pass on anything before they release it publicly.
And you're available.
I am available if anyone from Apple's interested. Yes.
Well, and one of the big issues with quality control is how do you define quality? Now that has been a big subject, and there are some papers, and I would encourage this group to work even more on this, because creating, that 3D is different based on IPD, on the size of the screen, on the distance to the screen, on so many different items that change the way it's experienced. So how do we define, this is good quality 3D? I mean, right now, and I don't want to be too, I don't know how to say it, but I mean, it's basically 3D that was popular and had good reviews in the theaters. That's good 3D. So right now it's pretty much the standard. It's like quality 3D is 3D that people didn't complain too much about when they were in the theaters. We need more. We need better. We need to have standards. We need to have metrics. We need to have some clearly defined parameters that will enable us to say that passes the test, that doesn't pass the test. And right now I think it's lacking, and it's something that will help us, because we all have our opinion on, I mean, some people go for the artistry of 3D, some people go for the experience, for the depth, for the comfort, but I mean, we'll need to define that a little bit better if we want to do QC control, in my opinion.
I will say this. I think one of the biggest audience complaints about theatrical 3D had nothing to do with the quality of the stereo, but had everything to do with the quality of the projection. Everyone always complained that 3D was too dark. And with a head-mounted device, you don't have that issue. I've also seen some very excellent polarized 3D LED screens that potentially are the future of 3D in theaters that are brighter than any projection I've seen. So I think actually there's a lot of issue with the presentation that can make something that was produced perfectly still not quite look right, and I'm hoping these new platforms get over that hump.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, they provide, like the headsets, they provide like an incredible experience. They provide they solve a lot of issues, and it's a personalized experience, so it's even better. I mean, it's a controlled environment. It solves a lot of issues that you have in theaters, that's for sure. But you look at Avatar too, and everybody like Avatar and James Cameron. I love Jim and I love his work, but at the end of the day, there are shots when you analyze them, they're divergent. Like you look at the screen and your eyes are doing this. It's impossible. It's no, but but I mean the shot is wrong. It's hurtful for the eyes. Fortunately, it doesn't last long. But still, these shots exist. They are in there. If you blow it up, if you do it in different ways, then it's going to be terrible. If you present it to a kid, the kid's going to complain, right? So the thing is, these things exist. We know that factually, it's not good for you. It's tiresome. It hurts your eyes. but they're out there, and even the best of the best is probably doing it right now. So, yeah, I think that making sure that we have ways to control that is going to be extremely important in the future.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. So we have half time. I have a lot of more questions, but before I continue, anybody here has a burning question you want to discuss? At this point, not? Yeah. So I think what was quite interesting, I mean, what was really great also in the Imaging for XR session, we had a lot of really interesting talks. So one was actually about this 3D conversion of sport content. Did everybody of you saw the demo yesterday? So it was basically the sport event. Do you think that something like this could be also the future in terms of 3D streaming services?
Well, so you're talking about the basketball game, right? The tabletop basketball game. Yeah. I didn't see it here, but I saw it at CES. It's quite impressive. I think it opens up a lot of possibilities because what I liked in the talk is the cross-platform vision that they have about it. So you can take any two cameras and you can actually do a virtual 3D production, or you can do volumetric, or you can do, there's a lot of different things that you can do with that, and I think it's interesting. Now, it's still like far from a perfect solution. If you look at the quality, the resolution, etc., there's still a lot of work to be done for this to be open. But I like the idea. Personally, I think. I don't know if you guys want to.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but is that really streaming? Is that really streaming? I guess it's volumetric streaming. Yeah, just not quite in the traditional meaning of the term of 3D content. But may well be that we will see new, not just sport, but theatrical content that might be released in a volumetric format. I mean, I'm not sure some of the big directors will want people looking at their content from a different angle than they imagine it to be. It might not hold their vision from a different angle. So it's an interesting thought. Lots of food for thought there.
Yeah, so I think it could be in the pre-production, right? But I think it's for basically live games. If you basically want to have an opportunity to change the content on the run, I think that's what they are heading for. So, and I think it's kind of exciting. It could change the landscape a lot in the future in terms of this kind of 3D stereoscopic content creation. I think then another big topic is, of course, it was great that you had the talk basically introducing the ecosystem from Apple, right? But it's, of course, very pricey, right? So that's not something for the normal consumer market. So it's quite high priced. I mean, we know from before that Apple is quite successful with this. So an iPhone is also not cheap, right? So it's always a very high priced market. But so do you think that's the right strategy to go this way? Or second question, do you think they will have lower end models basically, which will also make this 3D content available?
I'm not sure. So to go to I'm not sure I understand the question. So you mean in terms of?
So the question is basically at the moment, basically the entry price is quite high in terms of the devices which Apple provides. Yeah, for the Vision Pro, but also the iPhones, of course, are always the higher class models which you need. So do you think that Apple will make the move to also have this on lower end prices available?
I expect they will. I think Apple knows, through all of their product launches through the years, that they have a dedicated high-end Apple user out there who will buy their latest device at the price point that they set it at, and the pre-sale shows that. This is the Apple Vision Pro, the Apple Vision non-Pro model. Will it be announced in time for Christmas 2024? Well, we'll see. But yeah, get all of the Apple influencers talking about it early in the year so that when you do have a more consumer-directed version, there's already enough positive buzz out there that the non-dedicated person would still be saying, well, maybe I need to look at this Apple product.
Yeah, I think that the price point and what they're doing is a fantastic opportunity, and it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity because it sets the golden standard. Okay, so what usually happens with 3D? 3D comes back, and then, I mean, it's been going on since 1850. So there's nothing new here. This has been going on time and time again. Stereoscope, ViewMaster, whatever. I mean, it's always coming back. It refuses to die. So people say it doesn't catch up. I say no. It refuses to die. So one of the way of looking at this is that every time somebody launches a product, right? What happens next? You got the ripoffs. The ripoffs come in, and they all offer subpar product, and everybody like looks at that and say, "Oh, that is 3D. Not ready for prime time." So now we have the golden standard. We have somebody that says, "This is how it's done. This is how it's supposed to look at." So from this point on, anybody that launches a product will be compared to the golden standard. Otherwise, nobody knows. Nobody, they believe that's what 3D is about or what the experience should be. So I think that right now, keeping the price point high, setting the standard very high is a very good opportunity. Yes, you're going to see, for the first year, I'm going to Mobile World Congress. My place is CES. That's where I hang out. But Mobile World Congress, this is the first year I actually go there because, of course, Apple announced the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max shooting spatial video. What do you think is going to happen? Everybody out there is going to say, we're spatial. So I'm really looking forward to see all these different applications and products coming out. I think that 2025 is going to be an incredible year for 3D. Let's just make sure that we don't mess it up this time. So maybe Andrew, you will.
Yeah, I'll say a few things. Actually, no, let me.
Okay. Think about it. Okay. Well, two things that I can say. One, looking at how cyclical it's been, there was the 3D craze of the 1950s that really only lasted from the end of 1952 into the early part of 1954, and then 3D went away. Again, there was the 3D craze of the 1980s when the technology changed to a point where rather than having to have two projectors, you could run 3D on a single projector, which allowed 3D to exist from 1982 to 1985. Still went away again. This current wave actually began in 2006 with Polar Express and Chicken Little. And every year, the press has written an article, 3D is dead. And then the following year, another 6, 7, 8 3D movies are released theatrically. So we've actually now had almost 20 years of consistent 3D releases every year. Digital 3D releases. And yeah, and it was digital that allowed that. The changeover from analog projection to digital projection made 3D possible in theaters again. And so for instance, earlier we mentioned the Voodoo streaming rental service, which just earlier this week announced that Universal's Migration would be available in 3D on the Voodoo service coming soon. So there are still some existing home streaming models that are getting new material. We're still getting 3D in theaters and have been consistently for a number of years now. And I think you can visit 3D Movie List and actually track all of that. And I'll just end this with, I have a friend who had an opportunity a month ago to go up to Apple and test out the Vision Pro. And this is someone that I know who has as much 3D production experience as his work in 3D goes all the way back to the 1980s, and he's still working in the field. And his response to the Apple Vision Pro was, "This is the only way I ever want to watch 3D again." So that's really promising and has me cautiously optimistic about it.
All right. So I think it is really important that a gold standard is set, and we start at the top with the best experience we can deliver. It does remind me of going back to when Facebook paid $2 billion for Oculus, and Google came along and said, "Yeah, we can do that with cardboard." Now, I mean, it did, give birth to a new industry in using smartphones for VR experiences, but the experience was really quite poor. And a lot of people now are still, occasionally you hear people, "Oh, I'll just use a Google Cardboard with a smartphone," and I try and steer them away from that as quickly as possible, because it is a very poor way of delivering 3D content. So I am very buoyed by the fact that the Apple Vision Pro has been so popular and sold out its first release of headsets, and reportedly the content quality will be very high, and that does set up the industry very well, and anything that comes along, we need to keep that same level. That being said, we still have lots of very good high quality 3D TVs in the market, and a lot more 3D monitors coming onto the market as well. So I would like to see us being able to use those devices for these content libraries as well. So a fingers crossed moment, but also looking forward to how we are progressing.
By the way, I heard there's no more 3D TVs in the market. They're all spatial TVs.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to say, but we just have 1 more minute left. So I think to stay in time, we have to stop it here. But please, you know the gentleman now. So in the next break, you can basically step forward and have a discussion. So we could easily continue here for another hour. We have enough topics in this context to talk about. Yeah, thanks a lot to the three of you for joining the session today. And yeah, thank you to you. So we will continue now with the next session. Thanks a lot.